Hi, everyone. Welcome to Roll for Good. And we are here in a special edition panel, and we are going to discuss something that is very near and dear to our hearts safety tools in TTRPGs. If you're looking around us, we are surrounded by hearts and love. And here at Roll for Good, and all these amazing people also believe that a foundation to love and excitement at the table comes with safety tool. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, what it means to us, how to use them at your tables, why it's important, and how to shut down the naysayers who say otherwise. To introduce ourselves, my name is Aida. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a Latina woman of color. I have tan skin, dark eyes, dark hair, and I'm wearing a red turtleneck. I'm just going to go around the table in my overlay. Gemma, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I'm Gemma. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a plus size white woman with dark eyes, dark long hair, and I'm wearing a black and multicolored shirt.
Ruben.
Hi, I'm Ruben. My pronouns are he, they. I'm a biracial person of color with light skin, wearing glasses, brown eyes. I'm wearing a black shirt with silly patterns.
Love it. Nathan.
Hello, I'm your androgynous android game show host, Nathan Blades, he, they pronouns. I look like a mixture of Grace Jones and Max Headroom with gold octagonal glasses and a black and white geometrical jumper.
Fantastic. And Jack.
Yeah, hi, I'm Drac or Draconics, he, they pronouns, and I'm currently wearing a blue jacket over a kind of grayish top, currently wearing glasses, and I'm black, dark skin black.
Thanks to all of you for being here, and thanks for helping us, normalize the thing that safety tools really is a thing that is going to elevate our game on top of creating community and creating all the good feelings. So let's jump into that. I'd like to invite everyone around to just kind of share, because we all have been around the TTRP table quite a bit. We've all GM'd, we've played, we've been on streams, we've produced the streams. So we're assembled here specifically because we have experience in this realm. So I'm going to open it up. Who'd like to share, generally speaking, what is for you the broad idea of safety tools?
Sure. We can do that. So yes, safety tools are a much wider encompassing thing than the name would suggest. At its base level, it is discussing a way of being able to discuss the things that you don't want to see, either you yourself or as a table at whole, in a game for whatever reason, whether it's because it's triggering or uncomfortable or just not the vibe that you want to see in your game. And there are many different ways of employing safety tools, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of those different ways and which ones we prefer and which ones are useful. I do want to say, and before something else highlight that while we are all people in the space who work in the kind of performance space, these are useful both on air and off air at your kitchen table. How they are employed is probably going to be a little bit different. And if your games don't look like how our games look and how we use them, that is okay. These are tools for you to use in a way that best fits you and the people that you play with.
100% agree. Gemma, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I think it's how we keep tabletop role-playing fun. It's how we ensure that everyone at the table is having a good time.
Absolutely valid. There's the things that it prevents and there's things that it ensures. We can't just always look at it as something that is defensive. It is something proactive as well. Ruben or Drac?
No, I agree. It's definitely a thing that I think it also helps build more of a comfortable space just in general, because knowing exactly what you need to avoid makes it a lot easier for you to explore everything else. You're not going to be walking on eggshells when you know more or less what people don't want in their games already. Mm-hmm. So I think it enhances the fun, and also it might seem restrictive, but I actually think it actually broadens the horizons of what you can do.
Smart, totally. Ruben?
Yeah, and I think the discussion about safety tools, about what you don't want to see in a game, can really contribute to what do you want to see in a game conversation. It's part of the same game, the same kind of prep, and that can be very reinforcing, very affirming to know what you're not going to be seeing in any case, but also have that be tied to the kind of games you want to be playing or involved in.
Perfect point, and that lets me segue into the next point, Ruben, because we can talk a little about when can safety tools be used specifically. So you mentioned game settings. How can we piggy that back into when specifically safety tools can be used, do you think?
At any time, whenever you feel like a line has been crossed, or even when you're feeling like, hey, this is not going a place that I want to, just to direct the scene more. There's perfect examples of like the X card, for instance, which is a great example of a non-negotiable way to just say, hey, we're not going to go into this direction, and everyone is going to be okay with that, because that's part of just sort of like the social trust around the table. Mm-hmm. But there's also tools to prepare for the kinds of games, the kind of conversations you want to have. I like to pair them during character creation, world building, tie it to ability. Like, what does it mean if, for instance, you play a monk? What does it mean to be able to do martial arts, free-flowing movement? How is that accessible? How does the body sort of like resonate to you in that kind of thing? Like, what does martial arts represent? And that as a greater sort of like a focal point to talk about like disability or ability in a safety setting, but also in the world you're going to be exploring. I'm rambling. It's okay.
No, you're good. I was gonna bunny hop off of that. I know, Ruben, from us having played together and stuff before, and the stuff that you've run, you are very good at having games that are very specifically quite political in their nature and what they explore, and that can be fun and exciting, but also it means that there is an inherent level of awareness and caution that you're taking and that you invite the players to also take. We recently aired a session of Eat the Reich during its kind of like Kickstarter-ish window last October, and that game, if you're not familiar, is about a team of vampires who are destroying every Nazi they see, with the ultimate goal of draining all of Hitler's blood. It is a fantastic game and needs an incredible amount of care in terms of how it's run.
Yes,
the book itself does a lot of work in terms of highlighting how that can be done, but what we can do as players and using those safety tools makes that so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Ruben and Nathan both brought up points how you can use safety tools before a game. You can use them during a game reactively. Gemma or Drake, we know that we can use safety tools sort of after games too, after sessions or completed campaigns. Can either of you speak to those points?
I think so. And I know like we're going to talk about specifics, but one I really enjoy is the rose thorns, rosebuds after a game, because it allows people, especially if it's people you may play with again, or if you're planning to run that game again or in that world again, it can be really helpful. And roses are things that were really enjoyable, like were really great, were fun, were whatever, they blossomed. Thorns were things that were harder or didn't feel as nice. And buds were things that felt like they had greatness that was possible, but it didn't happen. And so it's a way to sort of give feedback in a way that isn't just like, this thing happened and I didn't like that. Because in those cases, I think if something is like actually triggering in the moment, we have tools in the game. But afterwards, it's also really important to have a framework to give feedback so that there's an opening for things that might feel critical, because sometimes players don't want to bring up critical things. And a way to get good feedback and just to know maybe where you may have dropped the ball around something that could have been better. And that brings in safety tools with also general feedback, and I think that's a really good way to like mesh the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say thorns, rose, and rosebuds as well. But I also think another one that I don't think many people consider as a safety tool, but I've really found, at least when I've been on the receiving end of it, was actually very nice. Was at the end of a campaign, we had like epilogues. We got to play, like, talk about or play out how a character's ended or what it did after the campaign, after these adventures. And at least for me, it was very nice because sometimes there are feelings that you have left over from a campaign they still want to resolve in some way, shape, or form. And while it isn't as critical as, for example, being triggered by a thing, it can feel not great if you never get to resolve those feelings, those questions your character might have had, and so on. So I think epilogues and even like prologues, which is another thing, like could be before a campaign, can really help with comfort and safety at a table.
I think that's a really good point you bring up, Drake, that it's not necessarily for things that are negative, such as traumas or triggers, but it's a framework to ensure that there is a healthy release and helpful frame for mental health. We ourselves are not mental health professionals. We are not licensed therapists, so we can't presume how to address each individual's and their mental needs. But we have means of ensuring people are heard. People can safely communicate how they are feeling in a way that isn't personal, player to player, for example. And also, it seems to me that leads to further story development, that leads to further RP, which are ultimately the things we want out of TTRPGs. Kind of one of the big reasons why I think all of us here do what we're doing.
There's often a discussion of the idea of bleed. I think a lot of the people in call already know what bleed is, but for those who are tuning in who might not be aware, it is about when thoughts and feelings are transferring from the player to the character or vice versa. So that could be you having a really bad, miserable day at work, and then you taking some of that miserableness into your character who might not have it otherwise. But it might also be things happening to your character that are uncomfortable or difficult, and that bleeding into then how you feel. And safety tools are a method of managing that. But also, the discussion of bleed and what it can do is something that can be very exciting to people. There are a myriad number of queer folks that I know who have done their first explorations of gender through tabletop RPGs, and that is an entirely reasonable and cool thing to do. Maybe a tricky and not always recommended thing to do if you're playing on air. Certain types of bleed is not useful for professional performance, but being able to, I think, as a group, recognize when bleed is occurring, bleed good and bleed mid and bleed bad, and being able to then use the tools available to help that situation or aid that situation is, I think, very important. Ultimately, safety is the responsibility of everybody at the table, not just the GM, and you are responsible for your own feelings, but you're not solely responsible for your own feelings at the table. It is a collaborative effort, just like the storytelling is a collaborative effort.
I think that is an excellent point. For me, I definitely see safety tools as something that also is there to protect the GM, DM, facilitator as well. I've been in tables where an outside facilitator, someone who is not at the table, is not RPing, is going to come in and run safety tools sessions with us. Therefore, if something happens in the RP confidence, if that bleed happens or something is taken personally or a comment or something is uncomfortable, we have a neutral person that is outside, doesn't have investment at the table in the game with the characters, to say, I'd like to share a situation and I'd like this sort of unbiased feedback, because it shouldn't be solely on the GM. And if the GM is responsible, who does the GM turn to if they have an issue? Their safety is also of paramount importance. They're juggling so much as well that they shouldn't, where it's possible, they shouldn't have to be shouldering that burden all on their own.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Just having that collaborative conversation about safety tools and about lines and veils, about comfort, already provides a framework to democratize essentially how to do storytelling. What I was thinking of, we've all probably been part of a sit-down tabletop session at a convention somewhere, or where you just sit in, slide in. Safety tools never a part of that, and that can get nasty fast given the kind of the average state of mind of the convention goer in that kind of space, right? It can get very confrontational, and I like thinking about what to talk about in preparation for this. I kept thinking of experiences during those sessions where there's a complete lack of them, and what that causes, and how much escalation happens, and then just having versus having a conversation up front about it, and then it's like we're all clear, we know, we understand, we breathe the same air, right?
And I think that brings up a really good point, that the safety tools we use need to be, they need to speak to the type of game we're doing. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the difference between in-person and online. I was thinking the difference between not streamed, or like no audience, and audience. I was thinking about the difference between a one-shot and a campaign, because each of those are you can't one size fits all, in my opinion, safety tools. What you do and like, when I GM at conventions, I do use safety tools, but they look totally different than the ones that I pull out for like a 6-session streamed exploration of something, right? Like, it's a totally different set of tools. And some of them can, mix and match around like lines and veils or things like that. But it's going to look different. And it's going to look different if you're gaming with people you've gamed with before, or if it's all strangers. It's going to look different based on the systems, and it's going to look different based on the stories, right? One of the things that I think about lots is Cats, which is something that like Pat O'Leary developed, or at least shared. And the idea is that it's concept, aim, tone, and safety. And so like you look at these sort of 4 big things as how you shape what's going to happen. And it includes things like what's the aim, what's the tone, because figuring out tone can be as important as what safety tools you employ. If you don't sell your game as a GM well, and people sit down and suddenly the this frivolous, fun thing is suddenly in the 7th depth of hell, you haven't sold it well, and that's on you. And I think, well, I agree 110% that it is everyone's job at the table to storytell, to work within those tools to ensure the safety of all the players and the GM. I also think it's irresponsible to missell your game, and it's irresponsible to run a game that you aren't equipped to run safely, which means you can't open, especially if it's streamed or something like that, like you can't open that box if you're not equipped to. Obviously, things happen. Like, we can't guarantee against everything, but it is your responsibility as a GM to ensure that you are putting something on the table that you reasonably believe you can handle.
Thank you. That's a great addition.
Yeah, for sure. I work in, to share a little bit about myself, I work in broadcasting. So the nature of writing a pitch doc for a project is something that is very inherent to how I operate. And I think it's actually something that if you are in the habit of game mastering, you should have a go at. It doesn't need to look super professional. Nobody's expecting a PowerPoint presentation, but it's a very good way of being able to get all the ideas down that you know what you want this game to be about on paper in a way that other people can read and understand from jump. And you'd be surprised at how useful that is. To speak about like convention or like event GMing, which I did locally, like Free RPG Day at my local for a while. And usually at those, I had the position of being able to write what my game was about, not just the session, but the actual kind of like content theme. And it would mean that anybody who signed up was already up for the queer anarchic cyberpunk thing that I would be running.
Nice.
And the instances where, due to kind of like admin error or people having to cancel and other people like showing up to fill these places and they aren't aware of who I am and what I'm about, those have been the roughest sessions because that previous discussion hasn't happened. A fun anecdote rather than a scary one about this kind of like social contract that we enter in, especially in public games. I was running one game. It was Shadowrun Anarchy. So everybody's being a criminal, and an entire group of friends came to the table to go and play, and they know each other really well and what buttons to push in each other, but I don't know them really at all. And a thing I like in Cyberpunk is being able to have people make difficult choices where both options kind of suck, but you got to work out what kind of thing you want. And it turns out, just by sheer coincidence, that when I kind of gave the hard question in that session, it was to the one person in that group that clearly I now immediately found out hates those kinds of super difficult choices. And everybody else at the table, knowing this person, rather than going to me and being like, that really stresses him out, we're like, yeah, Jeff, what do you want to do? And just having, I think eventually everybody came round to the funny side of it, but I'm like, no, don't bully your friend.
Yeah, but it came at someone's expense.
Friends don't let people be Jeffs.
Yeah, don't Jeff, your friend at a public table. You know, you got to let the GM know that that's a button that they shouldn't be pushing.
That's
No
the
Jeffs on this
PSA.
table.
That's the PSA. Anything to add, Jack?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say because actually Gemma mentioned very briefly about how it differs if it's streamed or not streamed, and I want to come at a more streamed aspect. I produce quite a few actual plays, and one of the things that I've started implementing, and I think more people should, is just having content warnings, because you're not the only one, when it's streamed, you're not the only one experiencing this game. You have an audience now experiencing it. So having content warnings, even if it's not about a specific episode, even if it's like, this campaign will vaguely have these things, always having that in play, having that play at the beginning of the stream, at the end of the stream, in the middle, having a command in chat if you're on Twitch and you're doing it, or YouTube and doing it live, having it readily accessible for people to be like, okay, cool, what is this about? And look through and see, okay, these are cool, I'm fine with this, I can watch this, or I'm not okay with this, I can't watch this. Giving everyone as many updates and chances to leave if they're not comfortable is the way to go. And I think on top of that, also read it out loud. A lot of times I've seen that channels that do it only read it or only have it like in text. Doing both is
Accessible.
good for accessibility.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I've played on an Alien RPG stream before, and I'm very proud that at the beginning of the stream, the GM would very clearly spell out, this is what's going to happen. We are going to tell you above the table right now, big scary xenomorph with blades is going to insert body horror things.
And MF is going to be torn in two today.
Yes, and we have consented to it. And part of the great part about having the safety tools is that whereas normally I don't play games like that, where I can communicate, where I feel safe and I can say above the table as a player, not as a character, I consent to potentially getting spaced or getting a hug, if you understand my meaning, and what's going to happen about it. When I have the helmet on, when I have my seatbelt on, when the harness on the roller coaster is properly secure, I can enjoy that ride more. If I don't have a harness on, or I'm pretty petite, when it's loose and jiggly and I feel I can slide out, I'm not having fun doing the loops and the twists. That's not the good kind of scary fun.
Yeah.
So I need that rail, and then I want to do it again and again and again. So good. It was so good.
Yeah.
I want to go on to the next topic, and it was something that Ruben sort of brought up, that there were individuals who sort of seemed to push back against safety tools in general, or just kind of said my way or the highway. And I know I have heard these arguments before. I've seen these discussions on various forums and social media, and I kind of roll my eyes about it a little bit, and I'm happy I'm in communities that are like-minded and do take safety seriously. And I was hoping that all of you can help me dispel some of these takes, these bad takes, these hot takes. And we're going to go one by one because I gave this list in advance. So I've seen people say, safety tools interrupt the game flow and immersion. Please liberate why this statement. Let's shred this. Who wants to go first?
As previously highlighted, having a discussion about what we do and don't want to see before we get on the ride is a way of helping everybody commit to the bit that much stronger. Talking about existing projects, I'm currently working on a Blades in the Dark / Spire, like both systems at the same time, because I silly like that campaign, where it is terrible people doing terrible things, sometimes for the right reasons, is like as a top line of Chant of the Void Sea. And all of my players know this, and specifically the kinds of politics we're going to be hitting as we play this game. And that helps them commit to the immersion so much better, because we already know what we do definitely want to explore and the limits of that exploration.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a part of that campaign, and it's super good. But also because of the collaborative element to it, it's rad to have an idea of like maybe looping back to what Gemma said, the idea of the bud, right? Like, hey, there's something untapped here or something we want to explore, and then after the session I can just go to the document and write it in, and then trust that everyone will pick that up and sort of like add to it. What is it? This is a modular body style? No, what is it? Is it corpse style?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Modular body style.
And I think that nothing ruins the game flow like someone being triggered and having to like not being able to play anymore, or like struggling through playing. Like nothing ruins storytelling more than half of your players checking out. So like that ruins it way more than someone being like, that's not for me, and we move on.
Yeah, literally exactly what I was going to say. I'd rather stop play for a moment to have like put up an X card than stop play for whoever knows how long, when I'm just uncomfortable or other players just do not want to play anymore because of the triggering event.
And I'd like to bring up the sort of like the theming of safety tools, because the X card is a great example of just non-negotiable, this is where we stop. But there's also one that we use, Nathan.
The script change toolbox by Bree Sheldon, which I think we're going to be raising in a little bit. I tend to use that in a very specific way that isn't textually mentioned in the instructions of it. So we'll get into, we'll put a pin in that. But I really love that particular safety tool a lot.
So the takeaway is that the more we normalize these tools, also you get to do it faster. Because we're in a trusting relationship. I can say X card or yellow light, check in, 30 seconds, nod, thumbs up, done. Next, move on. So the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes. And if you can't recover from a literal 60-second check-in, then this is me being petty. Get good.
Skill issue.
It's a skill issue.
If actors can have like a 5-minute intermission in a play where, you know, the scenes need to be changed and still kind of fall back into character immediately after everybody's gone for a bathroom break and an ice cream, then you can also get back into character after stopping for 30 seconds.
If you're allergic to the term safety tools, then it's just a way to make things better. Like you can also use it to, like, in session, to like, hey, actually that wasn't as good as I would have wanted it to be. Let's go back and do it again using the same sort of like tools, right?
I just think if you need to forget that real people are sitting around the table with real feelings in order to have a good time, you need a new hobby.
My goodness.
Brave pitch to rebrand safety tools as story enhancers.
Trademark that.
If your story lasts more than 8 hours, please do consult your doctor. But
not let other people take labor from POCs. Trademark that now.
I will also say, sorry to just add on to it. Safety tools, at least at the tables I played at, haven't just been for like telling us when we're like nearing kind of dicey waters, but it's also been kind of encouragement. Like a big one that a lot of my friends have is the green, yellow, and red card. So like they put that up, and we kind of made it a thing where we're like, if there's a really fun moment, even if we're not even involved, we'll put up the green card and just kind of like almost like a little pom pom cheering them on as you're watching it play out. Like it doesn't have to be, it doesn't always have to be to prevent negative results. It can be to encourage the positives.
Their affirmation.
And encouraging that role playing or whatever is happening is a great way of like, that gives way more than I think a red takes away, right? Like I think personally.
So the next bad take that I have scoured these awful forums and needed a lot of eye bleach later to clean my eyes was safety tools overrule the story and plot. I wanted to tell a story about spiders, but now this not nice term insults says I don't want to do it. Where?
And you should have sold your game better.
Yeah. Why did you not mention there was a cool spider in it?
The number one fear in the world.
I guarantee there's a table full of people who want to play a game about spiders. If you had sold it better, you would find them.
Yeah.
Is there a mic you can drop safely? Their equipment.
These are too expensive. We can't.
They're too expensive. We can't touch them.
Drop them.
Yeah, I
any
think
other
Gemma
responses to that?
I think Gemma nailed it. If like I think your safety tools should shape the plot in the first place. But if you so badly want to run a game with spiders, look for people who want to play a game with spiders and just let them know from the get go. And don't spring it on them.
Yeah.
Be aware of your
Perfect
own.
communication.
Be aware of the stuff you want to add to your games. You know, if you think tigers are really cool, then add a tiger to it. If you want to add a spider, just make sure that, you know, you are aware of that you're consciously putting it in. Make sure that people are conscious of that decision. You know, if it's going to be a major thing, you know, I've done horror campaigns where a lot of like surgery imagery comes to mind, and there are players that have like one of their veils, not a line, but the veil is like surgery stuff. So how to navigate
medical
that.
malpractice is a veil for me. It's really effective horror, but it's too effective for me.
and going about that, making sure that everyone's okay with it, didn't hamper the story, writing it or playing it at all. It actually made sure that everyone was in a mindset where, you know, there was tension, there was scariness, but there wasn't, you know, offense or actual pain or harm being caused. Like the bleed wasn't that, like there was no bleed. I want to say.
I mean,
I'd also say like
go ahead.
one example of I think safety tools actually enhancing the plot was it was near a campaign, it was a streamed campaign. Burn Bright, highly recommend, lovely game. And it was coming to an end, and we'll put with a very difficult decision of attempting to push back the burn, which is a thing that was like eating away at the universe. And the only way to do that was for one of us to sacrifice ourselves. And just springing it on us would have been able to go with it, would have been rough to make that interesting, because that's we're going to be shocked in the moment as well as in character, and it's kind of hard to really pull an emotional story out of shock. But we got told, given a heads up beforehand, that this was going to be a decision that we're going to face. And now knowing that, I could go into it being like, okay, cool, I want this to be an emotional moment. I know exactly what scenes I want to play out before this happens. And it ended up being my favorite scene I've ever played through in a TTRPG. It was my first character death as well, so I've actually been very lucky. I've heard horror stories of character deaths, but my first one was honestly incredible. And I still think about it to this day. And so I think in that regard, and in many other regards, these tools enhances plot and story rather than hampers it.
So it sounds like the takeaway. Go ahead. Last point.
Yeah, I just think beautiful things can happen on the margins, right? And so if we know what those are, and if we're all informed, we can, like, beautiful things can happen on those margins, but they don't get the chance to be there if we don't know what that line is.
The takeaway I'm getting, Gemma started and Jenna finished it, is information and communication. We can be mature individuals and say, hey, I have planned a game about spiders. You let me know that that's harmful for you. Then you know what? This game isn't for you, and I think you'd be better served at a different table. And if I run a different game, I'll call you later. Thanks. Have a great day.
Can we replace the spiders with crabs? another directive.
Yeah.
But you have
Communication like adults. Wow, really?
And normalizing saying that something isn't a great fit, whether that's players, whether that's expectations, whether that's game and story, whatever. And that's not a failing of anyone. Like, I think the big thing that comes up all the time with safety tools and these stuff is that someone has failed to do the right thing if an X card is called, if something's behind a veil, if whatever. And we need to normalize saying, this isn't the right fit. There's nothing wrong with any of us. It's just not the right fit.
And if you're at a table that says, oh, we're going to have beep, 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 beep at our table, you know as a player to turn around and walk away. That is A-okay. One more hot take that we can shred. That I've seen a lot is, but I know my players well enough. We've known each other for years. We're best friends.
No,
We don't need to
you
discuss things in advance. Ruben, go.
People are just like inchoate messes of emotions and feelings and weird impulses, and there's no way that one, even if you're best friends with someone, let alone if someone just entered your group just to try out this campaign, you don't know what might upset them or just make them queasy. Might be a pet peeve. That's what it's like. Reverse hierarchy, like pet peeve to what is triggering should be the priority, but that you can never know about a person. And saying that up front, like I know my players well enough, like, okay, great, you did lines and veils, you read them, did you even memorize them? Probably not, but you did not probably do the work, and you're what is a good way to say you're arrogant? You're arrogant.
And I'm just sassy, right? So my sassy response is, so then why are you afraid to use them? Like if you know them well enough and you know everything that's going to happen, use it. Nothing unexpected is going to happen. What do you got to lose? Like, go for it.
It's looping back to what we said previously about using safety tools isn't just about preventing negative feelings. It's about finding what people are specifically into, not necessarily in general. I went through a period of time where I was like, yeah, teen dramas, absolutely. And I got that and I did all that. And now my tastes are something else. And I want to do my lines and veils and what I'm excited to see about the current thing, which is like sad detectives drinking coffee is my energy right now. So if you know your players very, very well, that makes safety tools easier because you're now in a position to be able to navigate those with fewer hurt feelings.
Yeah. And I would also say, like, I'm sure you could be your mum running the game for you. They gave birth to you. They probably don't know what happened to you.
Me? What?
They probably don't know what happened to you today. Like lines and veils can like appear in your life. You can have new boundaries just happen. Like for example, like for me, one I really do not like and just suddenly became a line for me, like usually I was fine with it, was like eye violence. So it was just I used to watch a bunch of horror, was absolutely fine of it. Then just one day I was watching a horror movie and there was eye violence. I was like, oh, I very suddenly, like, I'm not entirely sure what prompted it, but suddenly I'm not okay with this. It makes me feel queasy. And if anyone had known me, literally all my friends, just the day prior, I'd have been all about it. My friends would have been like, cool, let's add this to the game. I'm sure Drac loves it. But the next day I didn't. So like you may know them as a whole, maybe even just generally, but you don't know what changes day by day for them. And it could be that one day that ruins the game for them.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes safety tools are also about a character and not just the player. So like usually I'm fine with my characters dying, for instance. And there was one where I think if she had been killed, like permadeath, I may have like lost my biscuits, right? Like, and so it's just like sometimes for certain characters, that's not for them. That's not their story. That's not what I want. Or and so it's also specific to what is happening around the table.
I think for me, the takeaway is also, I know them so well, they're my best friends, then you should care about their feelings most of all. You should care about their safety more than anyone else. A good way to demonstrate that is by doing the lines and veils. more so because of that. And for the reasons that Drax said, lines and veils change. Or like Gemma said, the character might be different than a previous character and those might adjust. The theme of the game might be different, and et cetera, et cetera. So, internet debunked. Wrong. You're welcome. To move on, because we had mentioned a lot of the tools beforehand, and I want to take some time to actually shout them specifically by name and who, at least with my bit of research, who the original name was. I have seen a lot of people reinvent and reformat a lot of these tools, but how about I go around the table and give us a quick overview to your understanding what that is. So, for example, Gemma, can you share with us a brief overview of lines and veils and a tool popularized by Ron Edwards?
Yes, absolutely. So briefly, lines are things that are you don't want to go over that line. So everything on the other side of the line is a no-go. A line, it's like the line drawn in the sand. We don't go over it. Veils are things that exist behind the veil that you can know exist, but you don't want the veil pulled. You don't want to see more about it. And what I always use to show a veil is something like child abuse and a street urchin. So if you're playing in a game and someone mentions that there's a street urchin, you know that that child is not living their best life, to put it mildly. And the veil can be child abuse, which means you know that street urchin is there, you know that there are street urchins. We don't talk about what's happening to them on the day-to-day because the veil is child abuse, let's say. And so that's the example I use.
I think that's a very clear and succinct. Lines and veils seems to be one of the most common used tools in most of the platforms and communities I stream at. There have been multiple groups, such as Monty Cook RPG, MCDM, that also share online documents, PDFs that you can easily copy and edit for your tables as well. So I'm sure that in the chat and everywhere else, we're going to be linking where you can get those tools specifically. Who would like to give a brief explanation about Stars and Wishes? Let's jump on that.
I'm not familiar.
Oh, come to school. Who wants to?
Yeah,
School?
I'm here to learn.
I can give a little bit.
Jack, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, so Stars and Wishes. Stars are essentially just kind of, like we mentioned earlier, affirmations, things that you thought were incredible about the game or the campaign or the one shot, whatever you had played. You can give like one in general. Most of the tables I'm at, we usually give one to each player, and including the GM. We also sometimes add a thing called sparkles, where we give ourselves one as well.
I love it.
Wishes is just I think it's very similar to earlier we spoke about rosebuds, of like there's this thing that could have been great, or something that a seed that was planted I would love to see and reap later on. A good example might be maybe you haven't quite touched on your backstory yet, and you're like, hey, I would like this aspect of my backstory to come up at some point. That one lets it be known to the GM that they're like, okay, cool, this is a thing that you want to see. Let's see how I can weave it in. Or they can even let you know that that's already the plan, which is always nice as well, to know that your story is going to be coming up soon. Don't worry. But yeah, and it can also be the case of like, if there's anything you would like to do again. There have been situations where there were scenes or something like that I just didn't quite like how it played out on my end. So one of my wishes would often be, hey, can we do that again? Can I confront your character again? Can you confront my character again? So you can re-establish where they stand or how that's coming across to the audience. A lot of my games are streamed.
Super clear. And just to clarify, the lines and wishes that Gemma talked about is something that typically is done at session 0 before a game even starts, and is something that is present throughout the life span or campaign. And the stars and wishes, or the rose and rosebuds that Drac was mentioning, is something that is typically done at the end of a session or at the end of the campaign. It's sort of a feedback framework.
Yeah.
And that is Stars and Wishes is by Lou Quaid and Rosebuds. We're going to Google that and we're going to include that in the notes.
I'd previously known it to be like comments and kudos, which is what I tended to use before. But yeah, there's lots of different ways. It's mostly just kind of like, it's like when you finish watching a movie and then while you're walking back into the cinema lobby again, and you're chatting with each other, being like, oh my God, this bit was so cool. I enjoyed this movie, but that bit was not necessarily my favorite thing. I hope it's not in the sequel. It's just that. It's just that energy.
But the director gets to hear it. The producer gets to hear it.
Exactly.
And they can actually make decisions
Man,
based
the
on
number
that.
of movies where I wish the director knew what I had to say about the movie, but yes.
All right. The next tool we have is the X card. Ruben or Nathan, would you like to give a brief summary about how to use this tool?
The X card is specifically meant as a sort of like you raise a sign during play. It is a mid-session tool to show that you're not comfortable with something and that you want something, just the session to pause for a moment. It doesn't have to stop, just pauses, and then the person raising the X card kind of goes like, hey, I want to go back to this point or explain briefly what happened. It's a very good tool, but it does require constant sort of like an eye. It's a visual, it has a visual component. So you need someone to keep an eye on if you're doing it online, on the chat, if you're, around the table to, make sure you look out for signs like that. And during play, you can get lost in, I like to gesticulate. So sometimes I don't notice things. And that is a crucial thing for the X card. I think it's the most direct one. I think it's very, very usable, and I think it's sort of like the start of it's the quintessential safety tool for any game.
I have definitely seen at convention tables where it is a physical card or even a piece of paper with an X on it, and the people either are given one or there's one on the table that people can reach and physically touch. I've been on streams where I'm directed to type X in whatever chat we have available to us, or if I'm on video, not necessarily to an audience, I can literally go like, and that's a very visual tool. It's like, I need something to be resolved before I can continue. As well. I have now played on VTTs like a Foundry. I'm not sure if Roll20 has it, but there are modules that also include X card tools where it's also anonymous. So a person doesn't necessarily have to out themselves as having the comfort. The GM just sees a card has been raised. It's over their monitor. Players see, and this is a very visual sign to say stop. And then the GM has the power to openly to say like, okay, it's been resolved. And the players get to see the GM has resolved this issue. So you can't just kind of ignore it and sweep it under the table. It's a very good accountability tool.
A quick bonus note, actually, about that I find quite interesting, because the X card can also be used for tonal non-triggering things.
Yes.
And highlighting these and highlighting that you can use the X card for basically any reason if you want to stop play is actually a thing worth encouraging. I was once in a game where we were having a very quite serious or dramatic conversation with an NPC. And due to kind of some player choices, it moved into a very horny, silly situation that I felt was so tonally off the rails from where we started. I X-carded to be like, okay. We're having a fun joking moment, but this is so off what we aimed to do here. Can we stop and take things back? And we were like, yeah, we lost our heads trying to do the bit. Let's get back into what we were doing. And it was fine. It's just kind of those instances where it doesn't need to be triggering or offensive or anything. It can just be like, this is just not the vibe that we wanted here. And I want to specifically raise my hand and say we've gotten off track in a way that everybody can understand.
Yeah,
absolutely valid.
Absolutely.
Normalize it, use it. I've been in a game where a player was physically sick. They were, like, I think, recovering from COVID. And in that game, we happened to be talking about food and giving a lot of descriptions about cheese. The player was like, afterwards was like, oh, I was feeling really uncomfortable and nauseous hearing about that. And I'm like, that would have been a good moment to pull out the X card. It's not a trauma, it's not a line, but it's also a way for us to like reset, address, and continue.
Yeah, I wanna respond to that. I wanted to respond to what Nathan said, and I think this is a good tie-in because incognito-ness, like what you mentioned on our Roll20 module, I think is a really good addition because that is the most common, I think, discomfort for the X card I hear is that using it makes you feel like you just dropped the plate. It's you carry the like anyone who enters into a tabletop session, I think, carries these like anxieties, group anxieties. Basically, you don't want to feel like you're going off script, and then you go X card. No, we're changing the script. I want to look directly into the camera. No, you're not. There's no script. There's only fun. Be safe. Have good tabletop time.
Thank you very much. You're not
Take
you're
up
not the one
space.
causing you're not the one causing
Yeah.
trouble. Take up that space.
I also want to, if it's okay to quickly add,
Yeah,
there's actually like an expansion of the X card, which is an X, N, and O, which Kiana
You're right,
Shaw
you're right.
and Laura Byron Monk work created, and it further expands it, so it's not just a case of this is bad, I don't like this, let's stop. It's also kind of a way to X, for example, N, X is the same thing. It's kind of like, stop, let's not do this, we're crossing a line. And it's more like we're kind of nearing the point, which is really good, because then at the end of the day, prevention's better than a cure. So like, if you can prevent it with an end card being like, hey, we're starting to get like, you're describing the spiders a bit too much here, for example. You're getting a bit too detailed with this. It lets everyone know, including the GM, know like, okay, we're starting to near the point where this will become an X. Let's steer clear from that. And O is used to be like, hey, I'm okay, which is usually in response to O question mark. O question mark is like, hey, is everything okay? Are those real tears or is your character crying? Is usually often a time you might see that played.
I'm getting called out.
And then you can respond to it with X, N, or O, and O being, yes, I'm fine, N being, these are character tears, but I'm on the verge of them being drag tears, and X being like, no, I'm drag and I'm absolutely bawling right now. Please, can we stop? And I think that leads into the part of like how it's a contract and agreement with everyone, because these are not just letting people know that you're okay, but it's also questions. If you question mark someone, if you see someone that might be uncomfortable, might not be in a good place, question mark is always a good way to check in on them, because there are often times, and I can definitely say I've been in those situations where I'm so overwhelmed that I don't have the wherewithal to raise my X card or N card, and people reaching out to be like, hey, are you cool right now, is everything okay, has helped my games and me just in general feel a lot safer.
I'm glad you have that community that actively cares about you, and that's kind of what we want for all of our tables. The X card has been developed by John Stavropoulos, and I'm sure the additions, we're going to find the names and add those. And one of the last tools I want to bring up, and there are so many more tools than the one we mentioned, these are just some of the common ones, is the script change. Nathan, I believe you brought this one up.
Yes, rubbing my hands together while I'm pressed against the glass. So yes, the script change shoebox by Bree Sheldon is essentially, there are many safety tools that have kind of built on the X card, realizing the X card has flaws. These are all tools. You do not have to use every tool in the toolbox, and some of the tools in the toolbox are inappropriate for the thing you're trying to do, and not all tools are perfect. So I think people were very intrigued by the X card and what it did for play, and people found gaps, and then they made their own safety tools that added to it. And the script change toolbox is essentially that. What it does is that it uses the symbols that you would find on any video player, like a play pause, a fast forward, a rewind, a frame by frame, and each of those does a separate narrative and safety thing. Well, as written, it's they all do safety things. The document that it has developed actually quite a bit over the last 6 or so years that it's been around. It's now in its final form. I do not believe Bree is updating it anymore. But when I heard about it and started adopting it into my games, what I found really intriguing about it is because you can use them not just as a way to manage safety and bleed at the table, but also as a directorial editor tool. A fast forward can be moving over a scene that's traumatic or needs a fade to black. We do not need to see the sex on camera, so we're going to hit the fast forward to move on. But we can also use that as like an Edgar Wright smash cut to the next day. If we want to, for example, something happens in the room, somebody gets shot, and there's a big reaction about it. And it's, but there's actually something else going on in the room. And we're going to hit instant replay, which could be used to clarify something that just happened and I didn't understand. Can we hit instant replay and you can explain what just occurred to me for my own benefit? But it can also be, let's go and look at that scene again at a different angle. Using those kind of like editorial, directorial uses is a way, I think, to really destigmatize the use of a safety tool. When players are willing to engage with it to enhance their narratives, they're then also willing to engage with it when they need it for other reasons.
Yeah, I want to add to that the difference between sort of like calling it a safety tool versus
The story enhancer.
The story enhancer.
DM.
Sold at gas stations everywhere. No, like the difference between that and safety tool is calling, a content warning versus tags. They're the same thing, but one version of the naming makes people very, makes them hold their clutch their pearls, hold their clutches, clutch their pearls.
So we've gone through some finite tools. We encourage you to add them to your game, read up about them. Links will be provided. Like I said, there are many other variations and so many other tools we haven't gone through, all with their plus and minuses. But at the end of the day, I think based on our discussion, it comes down to compassion and care for our fellow players is the foundation to nuanced, rich, and just on the line storytelling that we love experiencing and like lives rent free in our heads when we go to sleep. Like, that scene, because I had that build up, because I had that trust, because I felt safe letting my emotions out and I knew people weren't going to take it seriously or abuse it. That's what makes spectacular TTRPGs, whether it's at your home game, at the game store, on stream, at a convention, LARPing, acting. A lot of these tools originated from LARP tools, if I understand it correctly. So
real world acting, theater acting, like screen acting has somebody called an intimacy director whose job is specifically to be a one person walking safety tool to make sure that difficult scenes can be done safely for everybody involved. So it's used in all forms of performance, not just
and it looks great. It did not detract from Bridgerton at all. All right, and I think that's just about our time. Thank you again to everyone who was here. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your passions about this subject. Thank you for being big vocal supporters of this in your communities. And I'm glad that now we are all part of the greater Roll for Good community. Yay. So I'm going to invite each of you to remind us who you are, where we can find you, and any cool projects you want to plug. And I'm going to go reverse from the last time. So Drac.
Yeah, I'm Drac or Draconics. You can find me on socials, specifically Twitter at Draconics. That's DRAKONIQUES. I'm a TTRPG writer, producer, performer, everything TTRPG related I am doing or will be doing. Some of the projects I definitely would love everyone to check out is I am one of the project leads along with Stella Luna on a Fabula Ultima campaign called Our Lives After, which is a JRPG anime-inspired campaign. We're going to be releasing episode 2 next week, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is very, very late in the night for everyone in the UK.
Why do you keep doing that to yourself?
I have no idea. But you can catch it on YouTube at Stella Luna. That's STELLALUNA on YouTube or Twitch. And I'm also producing a Over the Garden Wall inspired action play called Beyond the Brook, which is airing also on Stella's channel, also at 8 p.m. Eastern, but on Fridays. But that's pre-recorded and edited. So me and Edward Spence, a good friend of mine, is the GM and editing that.
That is great.
I adore Ed so much. But you can check that out. We are halfway through the season. So if you want to catch up, please do, because it's gotten very, very intense.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's been, we finally got you on Roll for Good. We've been trying for some time.
Yeah.
And welcome to the time zone adjacent friendly.
God, it's been great. I love it. I'm awake, which is awesome.
Nathan.
Hi, once again, I am your androgynous android game show host from the future, Nathan Blades, tabletop RPG designer, streamer, voice actor, and general internet ne'er-do-well. You can catch me as the voice of Captain Oromar Vale on the Campaign Skyjacks podcast. You can also go and buy my games, please buy my games, at theneoncaster.itch.io. I also have upcoming and will continue to have scenarios in the Orbital Blues scenario book that's coming out and the Die scenario book that's coming out. So please do support the wide range of projects that we are involved in. Thank you.
Support Nathan. Support communities and creators outside the US. Support POC creators. Do it.
I mean, in this economy, you got. But no, thank you very much for having me on. I'm so glad that people are so interested in the wide range of cool things that we are all creating.
Ruben, another fantastic creator.
Thank you. Wow. I'm Ruben Ferdinand. You can find me at Urban Friend Den on Blue Sky and on Twitter. I'm not very active for my own mental health, but other than that, I'm active as a activist here in The Hague, mostly involved in queer BPOC politics. So that's what I'm up to. And in the future, maybe I'll be appearing more in the tabletop community. That would be great.
Oh yeah, you will. I've seen to this personally, Ruben.
The contract is sealed.
Oh my goodness. Gemma, someone, when I said we got to do this panel, I'm like, you know who I want on this? I want Gemma.
Oh, thank you. So I'm Gemma. I'm games mistress everywhere. That's games with a Y because I'm gay as heck. And I'm a TTRPG enthusiast. I'm currently working on a project called Solo Martial Blues, which is a solo TTRPG based on 1950s martial arts. And I have a game that I created that's based on fashion dolls called Life in Plastic. You can find me on socials. I'm not super active right now. I'm trying to convince myself to go back onto the socials. But I'm games mistress everywhere with a Y.
Thanks for being here, Gemma, and all of you. I'm Ida. I am a team lead here at Roll for Good, and I forgot to actually explain what Roll for Good is. Roll for Good is a community of TTRPG nerds. We're primarily based in Europe and the UK, and we believe in the goodness and the power of TTRPGs. And we sort of coalesce that energy and use it to fundraise for charities and causes that we care extremely about. As a community, since our inception, we've raised over £10,000 for charities supporting mental health, charities supporting LGBTQI rights in various capacities. We've also supported organizations that are feeding people who are displaced by calamities and other horrific events. So definitely come to our channel. We want to center and celebrate communities around the world, not just in the US. We want to center and uplift communities who are queer, who are POC, who are neurodivergent, who are women, femme, gender non-conforming. You have a place here. You have a place in a different set of time zones should you want to have them. And we wholeheartedly thank you for supporting everything we do. And we hope that this sort of panel can uplift your own games. We hope that TTRPGs can bring you the same amount of joy it brings us collectively here on the panel. And we think that this is a way that you will definitely be able to do so. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. And we hope to see you again. Take care, everyone.
Farewell.
Bye.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye.
Wow.
Yeah, happy Valentine's
Day.
Mwah.
Mwah.